The thing I did late last year got me thinking about the werewolf spark and led to a bit of an epiphany. The original werewolf spark came from the Greek god Zeus, and I believe that original divine lightning bolt is still flowing through the Teen Wolf universe today. If you're here watching anyway, you really should consider subscribing, or you could just peruse through the channel. I'll bet if you have a question about Teen Wolf, I probably answered it at some point in an earlier video. I was researching the druid thing, the fact that the power of the telluric currents is actually electricity, and that the original werewolves were created by Zeus's lightning bolts, and suddenly, I've got a theory.
I've got a theory, it could be bunnies.
No, Anya, not bunnies. My theory was that the werewolf spark is literally Zeus's lightning bolt, a bit of divine electricity still flowing through all werewolves today. Again, this is my personal theory, and while there are elements of canon involved, the conclusions are mine alone. First, some science. Right now, your body is producing about 100 watts of electricity. All human cells are fired up with the stuff, and our brains are crackling with it.
Life is energy. Energy doesn't just disappear.
So Zeus got mad at Lycaon and zapped him and 49 of his sons, turning them into wolves. In doing so, he irreversibly changed the electricity in their bodies, giving it a touch of the divine, or a bit of a curse, depending on your viewpoint.
The part that's lesser known is how Lycaon sought out the druids to help turn him back to human.
And they couldn't remove Zeus's lightning, but they could teach the wolves to shapeshift back to human. Zeus's power remained in these first alpha werewolves, and a tiny piece of that divine spark is passed on whenever they father children or when they bite someone.
You've been given something that most people would kill for. The bite is a gift.
Now, I always thought this was a poetic turn of phrase, but what if it's literal? Alpha werewolves gift a bit of that Zeus power to people they bite. Each time a tiny bit of the divine spark passed into another person, it turned them into a werewolf. That little spark wasn't as strong as the original, but the original also wasn't diminished by passing it on. It remained the alpha spark as originally created by Zeus.
It's that spark of power that makes you an alpha, that spark. It intensifies the color of your eyes from a bright yellow into a searing red.
That's my theory. The werewolf spark is electrical and traces all the way back to the original inciting incident in ancient Arcadia. It would actually explain quite a bit of what we saw werewolves do. Werewolves can transfer information directly into another person's nervous system. Memories are a combination of electricity and chemical storage. The werewolf spark works in a similar fashion. It is shared through a bite or a deep slash when a part of the spark from the alpha doing the biting or slashing is transferred into another person. This also answers a question I get a lot. A sizable number of viewers have asked how Peter controlled Lydia in Season 2. I don't think he controlled her as much as he programmed her and then guided her to bring him back to life. Jeff Davis tells me he planned to bring Peter back long before they even filmed his death scene in the Season 1 finale. They set everything in motion during the final 2 episodes of the first season. The mystery of why Lydia could take a bite from an alpha and not turn or die was the cliffhanger from Season 1.
She's completely healed?
No, not at all.
And the education of Miss Lydia Martin was pretty much designed as the B story for the whole of Season 2.
I'm not crazy. I may be the girl who sleepwalks naked and writes backwards on the chalkboard, but at least I'm not one of those desperate Viking-popping wrist cutters at school.
The two are inexorably linked because Peter never planned for the bite to turn or kill Lydia. He wanted her not only alive, but fully awake in her abilities so she could carry out his backup in case he died during the big final confrontation with the Hunters, which he did. Peter's plan hinged on just one thing: the fact that werewolves can create a direct connection to another person's brain and download tons of information. So when Peter chowed down on Lydia's midriff, he shared all the memories and plans he had regarding how to bring him back to life. It was a copy of him pretty much embedded in a series of instructions and delivered directly into her brain via a connection from his alpha spark to her nervous system.
At least you know that you're not actually crazy. Personally, I think that you're going to pull through with a minimal amount of post-traumatic stress.
To recap, the bite carried all the information necessary to bring Peter back, including the when, the where, and the who. But the bite also sparked Lydia's banshee abilities, which led to her completely freaking the fuck out. The back of the neck thing we saw when they were doing the memory transference is a more controlled version of that. It's a skill to send memories down the connection, but any connection that's deep enough seems to make a direct link to another person's nervous system. Now, it apparently takes a much deeper penetration to actually cause spark sharing and transformation, but you get the idea. And this theory might also explain why alphas feel a bit of ownership over their betas. Part of their spark now resides in another person. It could be why Peter seemed to control Scott in season 1, calling him out to the woods at night and then sending him to kill his friends in night school. If my theory is correct, the red we saw in Scott's eyes back then was a reflection of Peter's spark overriding Scott's free will, basically connecting to that bit of itself inside Scott. And since energy cannot be destroyed, when an alpha is killed by another werewolf, that extra Zeus spark leaves the body and connects with the spark in the killer.
I'm the alpha now.
When a werewolf is killed by a human or dies by some other means, the energy attaches itself to a living spark with the strongest familial link. That could be how inherited alpha status works. We also saw that time Derek used up his alpha spark doing the impossible and healing Cora. His spark wasn't destroyed. He was still a werewolf after, but he gave that extra alpha energy to her to reinforce her spark and cure her. Now, under my theory, the Hail spark is now divided in both of them, but neither has enough of it to be an alpha. Again, it's just my theory, and it could be completely wrong. Every werewolf, regardless of status, has a bit of Zeus's divine spark. Now, it's not strong as the original alpha spark, but it is still divine. It's not much of a leap to believe that by being a good person, morally superior and well-loved by your pack, you increase the power of that bit of spark that you have. True alphas are so good that their own spirit adds a touch of the divine to their existing spark and then pushes it up to alpha status. That would also explain why only werewolf Scott shared his spark with can take his alpha spark, because it is unique to him and therefore incompatible with all the other sparks in the world. This makes sense on a wider scale. Werewolves with the support of their pack, that emotional backing that lone wolves seem to lack, would, over time, add their own positive energy to the sparks. On the darker side of that equation, it could be why Deucalion got more energy from killing his own betas. They had spent their lives adding to the little bit of spark that he gave them. When he took it back, it was stronger than before.
Take that pain. Take their life. Take their power. It's all or nothing. You take until there's nothing more to give. That's where you find the spark of power. And then you take that as well.
To recap, the original spark from Zeus to Lycaon and his 50 sons is the alpha spark. It's different from a regular werewolf spark because it allows you to create new werewolves. It probably also gives a boost to strength, speed, healing, and the other things that all werewolves have, but it's really not that huge of a difference, and becoming an alpha doesn't suddenly make you unbeatable. I mean, betas or even omegas can be strong enough to beat alphas. If that wasn't the case, then alpha sparks would never get stolen and regular werewolves would hardly ever rise in status. Seemingly, based on what they showed us on television, the only thing that betas can't do is make new werewolves. Only alphas can, but even that didn't always work out perfectly.
Do you want the bite? If it doesn't kill you, and it could, you'll become like us.
So sometimes transferring a little bit of Zeus's spark will kill a person. Other times, when that little spark interacts with the person's own energy or their soul, it turns them into something twisted. I look at it this way. The little spark is a signal that says wolf, and it interacts with the bitten or scratched person's soul. Now, in most average, well-adjusted people, the little spark says wolf, and when it interacts with that person's soul, the message is clear. The soul accepts the wolf, and a werewolf is born. But sometimes the person's soul is damaged, or dark, or confused, and the little wolf spark gets all scrambled. The message gets twisted, and that supernatural energy takes on a shape that reflects that damaged soul. We saw that with Jackson. As an adopted kid, he felt rootless and lost. He sought direction and meaning for his life. His soul turned the werewolf spark into something that reflected his inner turmoil. He became a Kanima. That's a creature that seeks a master and has a desperate need to belong. With Kate, she was the most twisted and evil human we saw on the show. The spark hit her and formed the only creature that is truly evil enough to reflect her level of bad. That would be the shape of a cat, because cats are evil. Seriously though, she became what we called a were-jaguar, and what the berserkers in the Mexican temple mistook for the ancient Nawal that had first created them.
When I got here, I found the berserkers waiting for me. They helped me survive, and I didn't know quite why until just recently. It was then that I found out I could not only control the berserkers, but I could create them.
While she wasn't really Nawal, she was close enough to interact with the powers in the temple to de-age Derek and then turn people into berserkers. But as was stated by the Calaveras and by Dr. Valak, Kate was not part of the Aztec legend that formed the basis of that temple.
I'm here because of what you know about South American mythology.
No. You want to know about Kate Argent. You want to know about La Loba, the Bone Woman.
La Loba, the Bone Woman, is a Mexican myth about a person who collects bones in the desert, and then once she has a complete skeleton, she sings to it until the flesh and fur return and it lives again. The Teen Wolf writers mashed that whole story together with the berserker idea, and suddenly Kate was able to create and control bone-covered warriors. That is a little off topic, but I think it's important to explain how divine lightning that originated in the Greek pantheon was able to interact with the tools left over by the Mesoamerican Aztec pantheon. Kate wasn't actually the Aztec were-jaguar, but she was close enough for her twisted werewolf spark to make the temple work. Okay, back onto the main thread. Bites gone wrong, resulting in new creatures. Jackson's situation was apparently not unusual. There had been enough transformations that went wrong in this same way over the centuries to create Kanima lore within the hunter community. Now, we saw evidence of this in the bestiary that they showed on screen at the end of Season 4. And that fact led me to consider the other were creatures, specifically the were coyote and the Lowenmensch. Were coyotes are exactly like werewolves with one small but important difference. They cannot create a new spark to pass on to their children. Instead, the spark is divided between mother and child. This was a key plot point once we found out Malia's birth mom really wanted to kill her so bad. This quirk in a creature that is in all other aspects exactly like a werewolf got me thinking. What if all the divergent wares are just bites gone wrong? Like with the Kanima, the were-coyote twist happens often enough to become its own thing. Eventually, though, with the division of power at birth, were-coyote reproduction becomes dicey and would eventually lead to the spark being so weak as to no longer matter. As is typical, males of the species would be spared this particular power depletion, but as we saw, even a crossbreeding with a fully sparked beta werewolf did not result in a fully sparked offspring. This suggests, if my theory is correct, natural-born were-coyotes will be extremely rare in the Teen Wolf universe. This opens up a whole realm of stories about the Desert Wolf's origins. Given her personality, it is easy to imagine that she was a bite gone wrong herself. But there were enough were-coyotes that came before her that Talia was already aware of that whole childbirth downside. This part of my theory might also explain how that Nazi bastard Douglas became a Lowenmensch. Now, as far as we know, there is no such thing in real-world folklore, so his situation might be a wholly unique twist on the werewolf bite. It would also explain how he managed to gain alpha werewolf status. Just like Jackson, Douglas might have resolved whatever issue made the bite go wrong. He would have then transformed into a werewolf, but just like Jackson kept his tail, Douglas kept his lion parts, and at some point attained alpha status. Okay, let me try to state my thought more clearly. All divergent wares are bites gone wrong. Some, like the Kanima and were-coyotes, happen often enough to become a recognized separate thing, whereas Kate's were-jaguar and Douglas's Lowenmensch may well be completely unique creatures.